Okay, so we continue here with our study on Joseph and Yeshua, and we're in Genesis chapter 42. We'll start with verses 1 through 7. It says, "And Jacob perceived that there was food in Egypt. And Jacob spoke to his sons, saying, Why are you staring at one another? And he further says, Behold, I have heard that there is food in Egypt. Go down there and purchase for us a little food, that we may live and not die. And the 10 brothers of Joseph go down to purchase grain from Egypt. Yet Benjamin, Joseph's brother, Jacob did not send with his brothers, for he said, Lest a mishap befall him. And the sons of Israel came to purchase in the midst of the other purchasers, for the famine was in all the land of Canaan. And Joseph was in authority over the land. He was the seller to all the people of the land. And the brothers of Joseph came and prostrated to him nose to the earth. And Joseph saw his brothers and recognized them. Yet he made himself foreign to them and spoke with them obstinately, saying, Where have you come from? And they replied, From the land of Canaan to purchase food. So I have a couple of questions here that for us to ponder. In the light of the fact that we have been discussing all of these parallels between Messiah Yeshua and this Joseph, the king of Egypt, the practical king of Egypt, and the prophetic significance of some of these events, do you think that this perception of Jacob has some prophetic meaning where he is, in our last parts of our story, we're talking about how Joseph, interpreted the dream of Pharaoh, and they store up all of this grain in the store cities of Pithom and Ramses and all over the place, and now Egypt appears to be the only place that has bread, which we would talk about the bread being the word of life. And so now Jacob perceiving that there is bread in Egypt. Do you see any prophetic significance to that perception? Tracy, you're nodding your head in affirmative action.
I was just thinking of the Messiah, who is the bread of life, and how he's perceiving, if we're saying that Joseph is a foreshadowing of Messiah or a shadow picture or what, that he's perceiving this bread of life as in Egypt.
Yeah. I just wondered if that kind of, Jacob being the father of the sons of Israel, perceiving that there is food in Egypt. Now, of course, at this time, Egypt is a place of salvation. It becomes a place of slavery and a snare and a hard, constricted place. Isn't that what Mitzrayim means? The place of constriction? Is that right, Joseph? Mitzrayim?
I don't know.
I thought it was like fortified place or something like that.
Yeah, if you look up, look it up,
Egyptian word.
it is kind of a mix. I have heard that Mitzrayim, if you kind of translate it into Hebrew, is kind of like a place of constriction or something like that. I'm not sure. We have to look at it.
I don't think it really. Again, that's an assumption. It's kind of it doesn't really translate into Hebrew because that's what they were called, the Mitzrayim. They were Egyptians, and it was just what they were called.
So the brown.
So what did it mean in Egyptian?
In the Strong's for Hebrew roots 4714 Mitzrayim, it means double straits, like between the straits. So there is some form of constriction, or I'm in a nutshell.
Where is the word on your? How do you spell it?
Egypt.
Oh, Egypt.
Egypt is the Hebrew word. I mean, Egypt is the English word in the translation, but if you look in your literal translation, it says Mitzrayim is how you pronounce that in your Torah. And so the place Egypt at this time is a place of safety and a place of refuge and a place where there's bread. Mm-hmm. Now, of course, when Jacob and all of his sons, later on in the story actually end up going into Egypt during the famine, when it starts really ravishing the land, we're 2 years into the famine and they come, where's that land that they settle? Goshen. Yeah, so, and that is also a place of safety. And so at this time, the prophetic significance, as Tracy was pointing out, suggesting, is that the sons of Jacob are seeing that this prince of Egypt, to use the Disney phrase, is the one who is dealing out bread. He has the bread of life, and he is in this safe place in the wilderness of the peoples. I suppose you could put it that way prophetically if you want to kind of correlate it to the prophets.
And I think this is the first time in the chapter we have this, behold, I have heard, and we have this throughout the rest of this chapter, hearing or lack of hearing from multiple players.
I think you're absolutely right. The hearing thing becomes really important during this section. Tracy?
You may touch on this later, but do you think there's any significance to the fact that they are currently in the land of Canaan, and that name means humiliation or humble?
Yeah, I listened to some rabbinic parshas on this, going down to Egypt and, why did they go into slavery? And there's a lot of speculation, but it seems like at this time, some of the rabbis taught that, Abraham and Isaac and Jacob in the land of their sojournings, in the land of a foreigner, they're foreigners in a strange land, and they are kind of like touring the land and just seeing beforehand what is going on here, and this is all going to be ours someday, but they really are not given a foothold in the land at that time. It's almost like a preview of things to come, and that it was needful to send them. And of course, the rabbis, have a big, long bunch of discussions with various interpretations of why. Did they do something wrong that they needed to be sent down into Egypt to stay there for 400 years and become slaves there? And that's a huge theological discussion that nobody is quite certain about why that happened. But clearly, it's very interesting, and I'm sure we could, wax eloquent about that, but of course it would be pure speculation. But does anybody have any ideas about that?
Well, we know that the whole reason for them wandering in the wilderness was to see if they would follow him.
To test them, yeah.
See what was in their heart.
To see what was in their heart, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So,
it was a preparation. It was a preparation of the people to start. I remember a scripture, I can't remember where it is, but it says until Israel is backed up against the wall and looks like there's no help, it says that's when they'll return to me, Yahweh says. That's when they'll come back and turn to me.
well, I can personally testify that is my own testimony as well. When my rope is, I'm hanging on and there's no rope left, that seems to be when I turn around and
Well, some obviously don't.
Who?
David
and Abiram
Korah
and Korah, yeah, absolutely, that's true.
No, earth opened up. And
that's right.
that was the end of them.
That's right. So, would you, if you look at the fact that Jacob, perceiving that there is food in Egypt, but the brothers are looking at each other. It seems to be saying to me, they are looking around and perceiving, but what are they not doing?
Taking action.
They're not taking action. It's like they're supposed to be doing something, and he seems to be rebuking them. There's a little bit of a minor rebuke, it feels like to me. He's saying, why are you guys sitting around looking at each other? You're not, what are you contemplating your navels? I don't know, and some rabbis have suggested maybe they were, praying continually or something, which is certainly not a problem, but there's a certain point where it's like, the Father is expecting you to take some action, do something. If you see something that will, I'm opening a door for you, but you have to walk through it. So it just seemed significant to me somehow that they're looking around but not actually doing anything in the midst of this famine. And he's rebuking them, kind of saying, you guys are not doing any good just looking at each other and discussing the fact that we're in a famine. You're not doing anything. So he's saying, go do something about it. Go down to this place where I've heard that there's food and see what you can get for us. Do you see any significance in the fact that Benjamin is not sent down, that he is withheld from going down there? What significance would you see, John?
Oh, youngest brother?
Yeah, the youngest brother.
He's from the same mother as
Joseph. Right.
Beautiful.
Yeah, do you think that we see repeatedly in this story how Jacob seems to really believe I have one wife and two children. Jacob and Benjamin. And Rachel is my wife. How I got all these other people, I have no idea. But they're not mine.
Where they came from.
He really does see. In fact, it's almost shocking to me at the end of this chapter how he is, they're saying we can't go back to Egypt unless we take our brother Benjamin with us. He's like, I only have one son left. It's like, well, there's 10 more standing in front of you. What do you mean? What are we, mincemeat? But it's weird to me that he actually speaks that way, and he speaks to that way right to their faces. It's kind of, you guys are redheaded stepchildren, and I didn't want you to begin with. I don't know. It's really weird to me, and you can understand maybe where some of that jealousy was engendered.
Benjamin was the son of his old age.
Yeah,
and there was something very, very like Joseph. There was something very special.
There seems to be
in his nephesh. That they waited.
Yeah, absolutely. There does seem to be something there, Mike.
We have this comparison of Joseph and the Messiah, but we see the Messiah kind of roles swapping throughout all of the story, whether it be the cupbearer and the baker and the first and second coming of dreams, and Benjamin is the right hand of the father, right?
Yep.
So maybe he's being withheld until the appointed time.
Yeah. I think we've talked before about that there is something special about Benjamin somehow. I'm not sure. When we did our study in the book of Romans, we were talking about that, how the temple is in the land of Benjamin. And it was speculated that many of the people who believed in Yeshua at the first coming of the Messiah were Benjamites. Shaul was a Benjamite. I don't know, but there's certainly some mysterious things going on with the son of the right hand for sure.
Well, and I think, we see in a little bit that Simon is not released, so hearing is not released.
Hearing is locked up.
Until the son of the right hand is brought.
That's right. Good point. Hold on to that, Mike.
Sorry.
No, you're good. You're good. So, do you think that something can be implied from the facts that the sons of Israel go down in the midst of other purchasers? Because he says that they go down, and the wording in the Torah here in the Hebrew is kind of strange, but it seems to kind of bracket the fact that these brothers go down in the midst of others, foreigners, aliens who are also headed to this promised land of Egypt in order to be saved and get this bread that brings life. I think that you might see a little bit of a prophetic picture there, that when, like Yeshua said to them, you will not see me again until you say,
Baruch haba b'shem Yahweh.
Blessed is he who comes in the name of Yehovah. That at that time, which is coming in the future, we know that many of the tribes, well, however many there are in the land of Israel now, I don't know, but there's a fraction of them who are believing in Yeshua Messiah. But there will come a time when they will, they will get it, they will see it, and it probably has something to do with us here today, observing Torah, provoking them to jealousy, just as Paul talked about in Romans. And that they suddenly understand that Yeshua is Joseph, is their Messiah, and then they are going up into the promised land in the midst of the purchasers, in the midst of all of these foreigners who are also going to the land of promise. And they are brought in. Of course, they are sons of the kingdom, but the parables that Yeshua talked about, that the sons of the kingdom are withheld and they're coming in last. Prophetic, obviously. So now, how many years into the famine do you believe that this first visit appeared? Do you have, the text doesn't give us any clues, but do you have any idea how long maybe it might have been between their first and second visit? Any just theories, because this is just speculation. Just wondering if you guys had any ideas in regards to that.
Depends on how much stuff they got the first time.
That's what I was thinking.
It does, yeah. It depends on how much
How
food
long
they
it
were
would
able to
last,
get and
right?
how long it would last, and how long are they leaving their brother, Simon, locked up in prison. It's like, well, we're gonna go home and eat this food, and we'll be back when the food's gone and come and get you. So I have a feeling it wasn't very long.
No, because they wouldn't want to leave their brother there.
Right.
Thinks,
When they do go the second time back to get food, Joseph actually says to them, "We are now 2 years into this 7-year famine." And so I got to imagine that during the years of plenty, they may not have had the foresight, the foreknowledge, the prophetic utterance from Pharaoh to know. They're just thinking, times are great, man. Our crops are producing, but they didn't save up much apparently, because only, just a little while into the famine, they're having to go to Egypt to rescue themselves. And so probably, if I had to guess, they were maybe 1 year into the famine. They did have enough to hold them over for a little
yeah, but
while.
wasn't it Joseph that went to Pharaoh and told him that there was going to be 7
Yeah.
years? And so
Yeah, and I'm saying the sons of Jacob here in the land of Canaan
Yeah, they
didn't
probably
know
wouldn't
about
even hear
that. Yeah, and it certainly wouldn't have behooved Pharaoh to let anybody know, because he plans to conquer
rich
the
off
known
of it.
world and knock off all competitors
Yeah.
when he's the only game in town that has food.
Yeah.
If I had to do if you
Wanted to make
had
money,
prophetic wisdom right now that the American dollar is going to crash and burn next week, you're going to tell everybody and go on the internet and write it down, because
Well, they are now. Lots of people are saying that.
That's
Somebody
true.
is. Probably
That's true.
not profit,
But if you were the only guy, who knew, you might be wanting to profit off of that. Certainly, if you were worldly and didn't care about helping others, and that Pharaoh seems to fit that characterization.
Especially too now he owns all the land.
Yeah, he owns the people, he owns the land, he owns the animals. I mean, by the time this famine is over, he owns everything, and he's become incredibly wealthy. So, of course, we know, and I'm sure we can see that he made himself foreign to them is an obvious, significant statement. Do you see how that applies? That Yeshua is made foreign to his brethren? That now Jesus is a blonde-haired, blue-eyed Norwegian who has the name Jesus? Jesus. He's got the name Jesus, and he doesn't keep Torah, and he's a very different Messiah, and it's no wonder that they don't recognize him. Tracy?
Also, too, if you look at the places in the New Testament that talk about how Messiah was, they didn't recognize him after he was resurrected. It was kind of a... Yeah, that's true. When he appeared on the road to Emmaus and such. And then even in John 1:10, where it says he was in the world,
And
the
he
world
went to
came
his
by him,
own,
the
and
world knew him not.
his own didn't recognize him. Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a lot of parallels coming in here that he makes himself foreign to them. And so, absolutely. We're off to a good start.
Do you think there's any significance to how easily they make this journey back and forth between Canaan and Egypt? And, 400 years later, it takes them 40 years to make the trip.
Yeah, they're making a one-day trip, and yet it takes 40 years. And wow, yeah, that's definitely true.
How long do you think this trip?
Well, actually, from my understanding, reading this week, this is a 2 or 3, maybe 4-day journey. Especially if you're carrying, you got pack animals and so you're going at a slower pace.
Canaan to Mitzrayim?
Yeah.
That's a long ways. And plus they're going through desert.
Well, the Torah states in Genesis when they were leaving that it was an 11-day journey.
Okay, that makes more sense.
But the commentaries from the rabbis suggested at this time that they could have made it on pack animals and stuff.
2 horsepower horses.
Yeah, 2 horsepower horses, exactly. They could have made it in 4 days, maybe. But with 1 million people and old people and pulling carts and stuff, it was an 11-day journey. So that was the reasoning about that. It's a good question. I had actually read that.
Yeah, but the distance is I mean, which route did they take? Did they take?
Well, it seems they would have taken the
coast?
direct route through the land of the Philistines, which I don't believe that there are Philistines there at this time. So there wouldn't have been enemies necessarily in the form of Philistines in the way, like there would be 400 years later when the children of Egypt are leaving Egypt, or when the children of Israel are leaving Egypt. But in the section where they leave Egypt, it says he did not take them, although it was only an 11-day journey, directly through the land unless they see war and turn around and get scared. So, good question though. Good question.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to just map out
How far that is.
because it seemed like the actual route that Moshe took
It was
eventually
very circuitous. It was.
was not. I don't think it was around the Sinai hub. I think they went.
I think it was around the Arabian Peninsula.
No, well, they might have went that way, but they also might have went through towards not at the coast, but another way where they ended up in Midian in 11 days. Because in order to make that journey in 11 days, if they went around the Sinai,
Right.
the point of it, and through Arabia,
Right.
I think it's longer.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense.
Because you have to come all the way back up
Right.
Arabia to where Yitro was.
Well, my
Jethro
understanding
was,
is
and then back out.
that from where they were to go right up through where you would go through Gaza now, through the entrance through Gaza would be the
Right.
shortest route. But of course,
Right.
the Philistines were there, so it was like we don't want to. They're not ready for war just yet. So that was my understanding. Let's move to 42 verses 8 through 17. It says, "And Joseph recognized his brothers, yet they did not recognize him. And Joseph remembered the dreams which he dreamed concerning them. And he said to them, 'You are spies. To see the nakedness of this land you have come.'" There's Yoda again. "And they said to him, 'No, my lord. Your servants come to purchase food. All of us are sons of one man, in truth. Your servants are not spies.' And he said to them, 'No, the nakedness of the land you have come to see.' And they said, 'Your servants are 12 brothers, sons of one man, in the land of Canaan. And behold, the smallest is with our father today, and one is no more.' And Joseph said to them, 'It is as I spoke to you, saying, You are spies. By this you will be tested, by the life of Pharaoh. You shall not leave here unless your smallest brother is brought. Send one of you, and he shall bring your brother here, and you shall be bound, and your words shall be tested, whether there is truth in you. And should it not be, by the life of Pharaoh, you are spies.' And they said, 'The youth cannot leave his father. When he leaves his father, then he will die.' And he gathered them all into prison for 3 days." Oh boy. This is great stuff. So why does Joseph accuse them of being spies?
To test them.
To test them, certainly, possibly.
Well, they spilled their story. The more he calls them spies, they tell him more and more, and to help identify themselves.
Yeah.
So he's just verifying. I mean, he recognizes them, but then they tell all the details that really nail it down that they're his brothers.
Do they speak truth
Yeah.
when he asks them questions and they start spilling the beans and he says, "No, you're spies," and then they spill more beans? Are they speaking truth?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, they even say that they have a brother that's no longer.
Yeah, and the Hebrew
Listen,
word
we're
for
12
that
brothers.
is very interesting. What's that?
Well, they said we are 12 brothers, right?
And then he says a young one and one that's no longer, or something like that.
And
Yeah.
the one is not.
The one is poof, gone, out of existence.
They don't go into detail about what they did.
Yeah, they don't. There's no details about what happened to this brother who went poof.
I'm surprised he said, "But why? What happened to the brother?"
Yeah, I mean, exactly. I mean, it's a test, so whatever that one's gone.
Yeah, what happened to your brother who went poof?
In a way, he says it because when he says the nakedness means blemish, so he kind of accuses them also. It's kind of they put it on
An
themselves.
interesting
It's
way of
blemish.
wording it. Yeah, I kind of envision that he is. Of course, I'm sure that Egypt being the only place, in the known world at this time, which is just loaded with bread, it'd be a great place to knock over. If you could gather some soldiers and attack one of these towns and steal a bunch of bread, I'm sure that they would have been on the lookout for,
Well, I think you're onto something, because in Joseph's daily dealing, he's already has people probably coming to him saying, "We think this, we think that," or "We're on the lookout," or he's put out orders to keep eyes
Sure.
for something like
Sure.
that.
And I think that that's a good way for him to, interrogate them without being overtly,
Obvious.
I'm just obvious about asking questions, So I think it's certainly possible. What do you think about any significance of the prophetic significance? I mean, for them, the brothers being in prison for 3 days. On the third day, he brings them out.
Yeah.
Anything about that? Strike your fancy? I mean, there's so many biblical allusions to 2 days and on the third day, and what is it? The prophet Hosea, after 2 days I will,
On the third day I will
raise you up.
Me.
Exactly. So there's
Hosea 6.
Yeah. So there's something for sure that he's showing them. That obviously he's not showing them. He's showing us. Some serious prophetic significance here. Let's move forward just a little bit.
Wait, before you go.
Oh yeah, sorry, I ain't going.
I just wanted to kind of point out something that was kind of cool about this section about them being tested, because he says you should be tested by this.
Mm.
And then a little bit later in verse 16 he says whether truth is with you. And we know that scripturally truth is defined as the word of God or the Torah and the commands of God. His word is truth.
Mm-hmm.
And in Exodus 16:4, Deuteronomy 8:2, and Judges 2:22, it all documents how God tested the Israelites in the wilderness to see whether they would, what was in their heart, whether they would walk in His word or not.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of see that significance there, is that that truth in you. They're being tested in the same way.
And
then,
do you think they pass this test?
no, because
Good.
the reason why I say that is because it says, send one of you and let him bring your brother, and you be bound, and let your words be proven whether truth is with you. And if we think the word is truth, and Messiah is the word in Benjamin's name and son of my right hand, he is the truth that's got to be with them. They didn't have him with them yet. That's kind of how I was looking at it anyway.
Good. I like it.
There's a Hebrewism here too, or anyone that has the Hebrew here, where it says here you will be tested by the life of Pharaoh. It reads in the English.
Mm-hmm.
I know this sounds terrible, but it's an important. It says in Hebrew Chai Paro. Okay, in the Hebrew, Chai Yah means as Yah lives.
And this says, as Pharaoh lives.
Right. Well, this is saying by the life of Pharaoh. So, in other words, it's a prophet saying, Chai Yah, as Yah lives, this will come upon you, or Yahweh will do this for you. Mm-hmm. And it's the same. I think it's the same kind of thing here for Pharaoh, because he's saying, as Pharaoh lives, he's supposed to be a big deity. There's also profanation here. It says when we're amongst the nations, in Ezekiel 36, how the name of Yah is disgraced and profaned. May seem kind of silly, but what is it, the pig in the Muppet movie? She's always going, hi, Yah! I hate to bring that up, but it's true. She's saying, yes, Yah lives, in Hebrew, even though she's saying it in English.
That is funny. Miss Piggy is constantly proclaiming,
So she's
as
a Hebrew
Yehovah lives.
pig?
It's a Hebrew pig.
She's a
Hebrew
Hebrew
pork.
kosher pig. I guess so. You know what the other one is in the movies? It drives me up. When they say that Yahoo did this. I've heard politicians say that.
Yeah.
That is that's a total disgrace to the name of Yahweh.
Well, what's a Yahoo if you add the who on the end of Yah? Does it mean something?
Well, it's
Well, it could be a
vowel-pointed
shortened form of
Yahoo,
Yehovah.
or Yahushua, or in the Masoretes vowel pointed that way. I'm not sure that I don't think it's actually pronounced like that, but it's still representative of his name.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
So if they call somebody that, it's
So what about the search engine Yahoo? Search engine Yahoo?
that's a real profanation of his name too.
Really?
Yeah.
People
Wow.
wouldn't know that.
Yeah, interesting.
Oh, yeah.
Well,
I
it's
used it
just
'cause I
like
thought it
Joseph
was a
said a minute
sacred
ago. It's
subject.
like the prophets were saying, when you're out among the nations, you will profane my name, because
Exactly.
you'll be in
Look at Ezekiel 36.
you'll be
You'll
in
see it
total
over and over again.
you'll be in total ignorance, and you won't even know what you're saying. But
Right.
it's yeah, I understand that absolutely.
Fascinating.
So I'm moving forward just a little bit. This is now 18 through 24. Genesis 42, 18 through 24. And Joseph said to them on the third day. So he has pulled them out of prison on the third day. And he says, do this and live. I fear Elohim. If you are established, meaning if there is truth in you, one of your brothers shall be bound in prison. And you go and bring the food you have purchased for the famine of your households. And your youngest brother you shall bring to me. And if your words are found faithful, then you shall not die. And they did so. And each man said to his brother, nevertheless, we are guilty concerning our brother, when we saw the distress of his soul, when he supplicated us, and we did not listen. That is why all this distress is coming upon us. And Reuben answered and said, did I not speak to you, saying, you must not sin against the boy? And you did not listen. And moreover, behold, his blood is required. Yet they did not know that Joseph heard, for there was a translator between them. And Joseph stepped away from their presence and wept. And he returned to them and spoke to them. And he took Simeon away from them and bound him before their eyes. Oh, this is great. This is really good. Notice that each man said to his brother, we are guilty. Each man said to his brother, we are guilty. This is not one of them saying, you guys, we're guilty. It's like each person. As the Hebrew is really explicit here, saying each person was looking at his brother and saying, we are guilty. We are guilty. We are guilty. We are guilty. It's like they're constantly looking at each other saying, we are guilty. We are guilty. We are guilty. And this is precisely why I believe that Joseph is weeping. And he sees their repentant hearts. But he knows we have just a little further. We have a little bit further to go. We must test them a little bit further. They must be suffering just a little bit further. Because I know I have a plan. I'm going to bring my whole family here. This is the ultimate plan. And we'll get into that in just a moment.
Beautiful story.
It is awesome, yes. So here's a fascinating thing. Why does Reuben say, and why does he use this phrase, his blood is required? Where does that come from? Have you heard that before?
Here in the beginning.
Cain and
So
Abel.
Cain and Abel.
Yes. What is that in reference to?
Or the slaying.
The slaying
yeah,
of...
his blood went to the ground.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
Cain slew Abel.
Yeah. And he says, I will require it of you.
Exactly.
Now, you know, the next time that phrase is used is very, very interesting. It moves forward in time. Go to Deuteronomy chapter 18. If you go to Deuteronomy chapter 18, verse 18, this next time that this phrase is used, back up to 17, excuse me, Deuteronomy 17. Then Yehovah said to me, Moses, they have done well in all that they have spoken. A prophet shall I raise up to them from among their brothers, like you, and I will put my words in his mouth, and he will speak to them all that I shall instruct him. Yet it shall come to be that the man who should not hearken to my words, that the prophet shall speak in my name, I myself shall require his blood from him. Who's that talking about?
Which verse were you in?
17 through 19, or 17 through 19, yes. Deuteronomy 18, 17 through 19. This is the prophecy of the Messiah that is given through Moses. And he says, whoever does not listen to the prophet, I will require his blood of him. So the first time this saying, his blood is required, is talking about Cain and Abel, his brother slaying him and being required from his blood. But then the next time is about the prophet that is coming, like Moses, who will hear directly from heaven and speak. And whoever will not listen to him, his blood shall be required of him. I don't think it's insignificant that Reuben said his blood is required of us.
And the only down or blood that can cover that sin
would be the blood of Messiah.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think there's a very clear reference to the blood of Messiah. His blood is required for the sin that we have committed against our brother. I think that's and of course, future generation, they might have heard this from their grandfather or their great grandfather, about Cain and Abel. But of course, future generations reading this would be able to reference it back to Deuteronomy, talking about their blood would be required of them if they don't hear that prophet. So I think that's a really significant thing.
And it's never forgotten unless there is a kippur,
A covering.
Kippurim, unless
That's
there's
right.
a covering.
Yeah.
Whatever that,
That's right. That's right. Now, of course, I think Mike or Tracy brought up a moment ago about the significance of Shimon being taken away. We were just studying this in Hebrew class a little bit ago. Shema, Shimon, hearing. Their hearing is bound up and taken away
Until they return with the son of the
until
right
they
hand.
turn until they return with the son of the right hand. So we have another bit of prophetic significance here in that one of their brothers is named Shimon, which literally, what is the meaning of Shimon? That Hebrew name?
And the Shema
Yeah,
comes from, it sounds like the root word is Shema.
yeah, it is.
Hear or
definitely.
listen.
Yeah,
What, he who hears?
he who Yehovah hears, I think, is what Leah spoke those words when she gave birth to him. Yehovah has heard me, so she named him Shimon.
Shema, but it still lays in just the niche of hearing.
Yeah, yeah. So I think their hearing has been stripped from them, and I think that's some clear prophetic significance for future generations of the sons of Israel who would have their hearing stripped away. And in time of Moses, when he gives them the commands of Yehovah, he says, Yehovah has not yet given you eyes to see and ears to hear and heart to understand, after they have just received the Torah. And of course, Yeshua Messiah would say essentially the same thing. You cannot hear me because you are not my sheep.
And it's in Yeshayahu, in
Yeah.
Isaiah 28. They have eyes, but they cannot see. They have ears,
But they cannot
They
hear.
cannot
Yeah, absolutely. So there's no coinky dink here that Shimon is the one who's being bound up and taken away. Now I just wanted to briefly touch on this, and this is having to do with Yosef being overcome by emotion. And this happens to him, I think, 2 or 3 times in this narrative, that he is overcome by emotion. And each time, what does he do? He goes somewhere else, and it's private. What do you think that we can glean from this in regards to our own emotions?
Run away.
Don't run away from your emotions. He wasn't stuffing his emotions in today's modern psycho parlance. He wasn't an emotional stuffer. He felt those emotions and he expressed those emotions, but he did it privately. Now, I think that there's something, how in previous generations in America and probably other places in the world, men didn't cry.
Exactly.
Men were men, and they did not display that emotional content on that level. Now today, men are much more, I don't want to say effeminate, sensitive.
Men cry, but the women don't.
Yes, that's right.
At least that's what I saw on TV.
That is correct. No, I think that Yosef you can learn a lesson here, that emotion is important, but also dangerous. Yes, ma'am.
Well, even like in today's world, with social media and everything, people just, their entire personal everything, and it's just ridiculous.
It's all just hanging out there.
Yeah, and it's for drama, whatever it is. I don't get why they do, but attention, whatever it is. But it's such a huge thing in our world, at least.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is, and that's
And I don't
exactly
think it belongs
why
to the public.
I brought it up. I think I agree, and I'm not arguing that men should be totally stoic, with the stiff upper lip and whatnot. But perhaps we could use a little bit more of that. And you notice, remember now, Yosef did not. It doesn't say that he controlled himself. It says he went in private and he expressed his emotions in a healthy way. He cried. He may have thrown some things. I don't know. But he expressed those emotions. But he did it in private. And so I think that we can learn from that it's good to have emotion. But emotions are good things. They are a natural thing that comes through it. But remember also that emotions are engendered or come about because of your thoughts. Emotions don't just happen by themselves, except in special situations, like if you open your front door and there's a pit bull standing there and it's snarling. You're going to have an instant emotion of fear, but that's from an external source. But emotions which are internally engendered are almost always engendered in the mind and come from our thoughts. And so I think
that's such a miracle. I mean,
it really is.
Think about it. A computer doesn't laugh or doesn't cry or doesn't have, it doesn't really understand.
It parrots, right?
And we are walking biological
computers,
machines,
yeah.
But we're created by it's just such an incredible thing to have an emotion.
Yeah.
To be able to laugh, to be able to cry, it's supernatural.
That's what separates us from the animals.
Yeah.
And I think that I would just like us to pull out a little bit here and say, look, be careful of your emotions. A lot of people, and I know that from, when I was a boy, going to church, we went to a very emotional type of church, and I know that, Aunt June can testify, and Camelia can also testify that the churches that we frequented in those days were very emotionally based.
Yeah.
And, it was like, it was emotionally based. There wasn't a lot of, real stuff going on here. And you can really get wrapped up in emotion, and you can also begin to interpret what you might think are movements of the spirit, perhaps, or something, with your own emotional content and makeup, to say, the spirit is moving me when you might just be having an emotional day. I don't know, but it seemed like there was
which spirit's moving you.
It's certain which spirit is moving you. Yeah, I know. That's a good question. So, your emotions can absolutely deceive you. In fact, you can really easily get sucked into sin from your emotional reaction to things. And so, yes.
Don't we talk about fear, like letting fear, lead us and drive us?
Oh, absolutely. I think that is such a huge one, especially today, because I know that in my own case and in the case of my wife, we kind of got into the Hebrew Roots movement in part out of a little bit of apprehension about looking out into the world and saying, man, this place seems to be falling apart. And, the Messiah ought to be coming any time now. Why is the world going to such great depths into darkness and the Messiah has not yet come to rapture us off the planet? Something's wrong. And so we began to look at a pre-tribulation rapture and wonder how come we weren't sucked out of this place yet. And by golly, that just started a whole rock rolling downhill, and here we are today. But yeah, we need to.
Things, with what you're bringing up as far as leaving and not letting that emotion overrun the plan.
Yeah.
Is this picture of the Messiah.
Yes.
And the Messiah only came to do what God told him to speak and to do.
That's right.
And he's not allowing himself to get in the way of that plan.
Right. Exactly. He is venting that emotion and setting it aside and doing what needs to be done. And I think we can...
Because he didn't want to let his brothers know that he knew them. So
it would have blown the plan.
When your emotions get ready to burst,
yeah,
like his was, because he loved his brothers and his father and all that,
that's right.
He had to go away and do that.
That's right.
He had to contain himself and come back.
It would have messed things up. Yes, ma'am.
Didn't Yeshua go off by himself here and there?
Many times he did go off by himself. Yes, I think that's it. And now it doesn't say much about any emotional content necessarily, but I think
because
that's certainly...
Because he was by himself.
That, there you go. There was no witness to testify. Tracy, sorry?
He wept, but I don't know.
Yeah, that's true. He did weep in public at least once that we know of. Yeah, Tracy, go ahead.
I I just wanted to say in this section here, and I could be reaching, but I see the 2 greatest commandments here. Because he says, it says here at the beginning of 18, and on the 3rd day, Joseph said to them, do this and live. I fear God, which I thought just kind of stuck out to me. I'm like, that do this and live. I remembered that from in Leviticus 18. It says, you shall therefore keep my statutes and my judgments, which if a man does, he shall live by them. I am Yehovah. But then again in Luke 10:27, when someone was asking Messiah, what is the greatest command? Or he asks them, and he says, love the Lord your God with all your heart, and your neighbor as yourself. He says, you answer rightly, do this, and you will live.
Do this and you will live.
So here I see him say, I fear God. That to me is the
first
love the Lord
commandment.
your God. But then down in verse 21, he says, and they said to each other, his brother, we are truly guilty because of our brother, whom we saw in distress of his soul when he begged us, and we did not hear. Love your neighbor as yourself.
Oh, look at her go. She ain't reaching. She's reaching right into the bag and pulling out a rabbit.
Take that!
I like it. That's great, Tracy. Excellent job. So yeah, just in regards to the emotional stuff, I think that you can see pictures repeatedly of when emotions got in the way of the plan. You know, I remember how Abraham was afraid when he visited Egypt last time, and when he left with some additional baggage. Remember, he pretended that Sarah was his sister and ended up with a little Hebrew servant girl who ended up birthing Ishmael, who is still trying to kill us to this day. And you can see that his son Isaac did the same thing in front of Abimelech. Oh, she's my sister. Yeah, when we get afraid, we do stupid things. Because reacting appropriately to fear is very challenging. Reacting to fear in appropriate fashion is very challenging. Let us move forward a little bit. Oh, this is a good one. So, and this is chapter 42, verses 25 through 28. It says, and Joseph gave instructions when they were filling their vessels with grain to return each man's money to his sack and to give them provisions for the way. And it was done for them. And they loaded the grain onto their donkeys and went forth. And one of them opened his sack, Hebrew sako, to give fodder to his donkey at their lodging, and saw his money in his pouch. And behold, it is in the mouth of his amtaket, his bag. And he said to his brothers, my money is here, and moreover, it is in my bag, amtaket. And they went forth with faint and trembling hearts, each man saying to his brother, what is this that Elohim has done to us? Now, I wanted you to just notice this interesting thing here, that you see that they filled their vessels. That is a third Hebrew word that seems to be some kind of container that you could put a sack into. Then you've got this Hebrew word, and one of them opened his sack. That's literally the Hebrew word sack. The Hebrew word is pronounced sack. But this Hebrew word, whenever they open and are surprised, and this happens 3 times, they open it and are surprised. It's a totally different Hebrew word, amtaket, which is another Hebrew word for sack or bag. But it's interesting because I know that you guys have seen this when you play with Hebrew words, that if you take this Hebrew word amtaket and you simply split it in half, you have emet, het, truth, fear. And then if you just simply take off the first letter and leave the remainder alone, you've got aleph underneath. What do you mean? What do you think this means? Aleph underneath. What does the aleph engender in your mind? The Father. The Father is underneath it.
Wow.
The Father is underneath it.
Or behind the
behind
money being in the bag.
The Father is behind it.
And that's what he's. But
There's
doesn't
truth.
he even say that? He says, "What is this Elohim has done?"
That's
to
right.
us?"
That's right. And it struck me as kind of strange that there were these 3 different words for sack in Hebrew. One of them being sack, which I thought was
but
interesting.
that all usually denotes when you switch if you switch letters and stuff, it's
Yeah, I'm not talking about it from a
I,
Hebrew linguistics
Okay.
perspective. I'm just simply saying that the Hebrew letter Aleph, in a lot of studies, people will say, well, it's the strength of the house, it's the ox, it's the strength. So people will often relate the Aleph in a picture language kind of thing as the father. So I just thought it was interesting that you had this weird word for sack, and then if you break it up, it's fear and truth, and if you want to take it a little bit further, the father is behind it, which is curious to say the least. Do you have anything else on this little section? I didn't go too deep on this section, Joseph.
the sock too is when they put on sackcloth, the word is sock also.
Yeah, I just thought that was funny. Sack. So I'll move forward just a little bit. And they came to Jacob their father to the land of Canaan and told him all that had befallen them, saying, the man, the Lord of the land, spoke to us obstinately and gave us over in ward, or put us in prison, as spies of the land. And we said to him, we are honest men. We have not come to spy. We are 12 brothers, sons of our father. One is not, and the youngest is today with our father in the land of Canaan. And the man said to us, the Lord of this land, by this I shall know if you are honest. Leave one of your brothers with me, and the food you have purchased for the famine of your households take and go, and bring your youngest brother to me. Then I will know that you are not spies, for you are truthful. Your brother will I give back to you, and you will buy and sell in the land. And it happened that when they emptied their sacks, behold, each man's money pouch was in his sack. And they and their father saw the pouches with their money and were fearful. And their father Jacob said to them, I am bereaved. Joseph is not, and Simeon is not, and Benjamin you will take. All these things have come upon me. And Reuben spoke to his father, saying, put my 2 sons to death if I do not bring him back to you. Give him into my hand, and I will restore him to you. And he said, you shall not take my son down, for his brother is dead, and he alone remains. And if anything happens to him on the way in which you are going, then you will bring my gray head down in affliction to the unseen. Now this is just them, of course, relating what happened in Egypt. But I see... we already kind of spoke a little bit about the fact that he is really kind of kicking these boys by saying, Joseph is gone and Benjamin is the only one I got left. And that just strikes me as really weird. And then what do you think of Reuben's brilliant idea? You can kill my 2 children if I do not bring him back to you.
Because that'll make him feel so much better.
Yeah, that'll be so much better. I'll get, if you don't bring my son back, I'll get to kill 2 of my grandkids. That's a great idea.
This kind of reminds me too of the story of Sodom and Gomorrah when Lot says, here, take my daughters.
Yeah.
That really just, what?
Yeah, that was very strange, and I think that's a good
wait, let's
comparison.
touch on that. Lot knew that they were homosexuals. They wouldn't hurt the daughter. It was some sort of him, I want to say, doing some decisive
Trickery.
some
he's
wordplay
trying to
and then
fake there.
distracting
He's
them.
so
It got them
upset.
more angry when he
But
said
some of them were
that.
probably bisexual. I don't think any man would father his daughters like that who was supposed to be a
No.
righteous man would say, take my daughters.
That is certainly
Just,
unusual.
certainly a question mark, but
Yeah,
he
absolutely.
did say it. And
Yeah.
There's a lot of questionable things about that. And his daughters.
There, yes.
Yes,
There are some-
That's exactly what I
There are some questionable
Maybe
practices
he's
of Lot and his
trying
daughters.
to get out of here 'cause it's
Don't
control
be
out
mean.
there.
This is why. This is why. Take her.
Maybe it had been better if they had been taken by them. Certainly would have been less trouble for our people. The sons of Ammon and Moab, didn't treat us very well later on. It might have been better if they had been given to the
there would
Sodomites.
have been 3 statues of a pillar.
Yeah, no kidding. Anyway, no, that's terrible. Yeah, edit, exactly. Mike, would you like to throw in 3 cents? No, you were just waving your hands.
I was just stretching
Just stretching out. I got you.
He's just
Pulling a little
used to it.
Jedi move there. Okay. So that, my friends, if I'm not mistaken, is the end of chapter 42, and our time is rapidly approaching its conclusion. And I don't have anything else for you this evening.
You know, you wanted to mention about the 25th and the 1st.
Oh, yes, I did. Thank you, sir. Let us pray, and then we will have that brief discussion.